Welcome to the Board of Commissioners work session, March the 10th, 2020. It's time we'll call to order. First item on the agenda is the Great Race Update. The one and only Dave Kirk.
Beautiful. I need to state my address and all that too, Mayor?
Name and address for the record.
Sure. It's Dave Kirk, 2412 South Cherokee Drive, Owensboro, Kentucky, 42301. All right, first off, I just want to say thank you guys for allowing us to kind of talk about what the Great Race and what all this entails. If anybody saw the article in the Messenger Inquirer on Sunday, Keith Lawrence did a really good job of kind of talking about the tourism market, what we can expect, and how we can grow it. And one of the big things from that is events. We have to bring more events to Owensboro. No matter what type of those are sporting events, conventions, we've got to get more things here. So one of the things that we've looked at is kind of unique ways that we can offer something for the entire city when an organization comes to town. And we were approached, I guess it would have been last summer, just got a random phone call one day from a guy who said he was with the Great Race. And I immediately thought he was talking about the movie The Great Race, or maybe The Amazing Race, you know, where they go across. And he said, no, it's a car thing. And so I said, well, let me come down to your city, check it out, and kind of tell you more what it is. And quickly I realized that we were going to have an opportunity to do something special. Essentially what the Great Race is it's an annual event that's been going on since the 70s, and it's a bunch of classic antique cars that essentially race across America. They pick one city and they go to another, and they do it by different parts of the United States, and they've been in Canada a couple times too. This particular one is from San Antonio, Texas, to Greenville, South Carolina. It will be Saturday, June 20th to the 28th, but they're making a stop here in Owensboro on June 24th for an overnight. About 500 people are a part of this, as far as racers, people with the cars that follow them. Again, these are all pre-1974 cars, so many of them, like the ones that are in the early 1900s, travel with trailers because they can only go so far. And essentially, their crew, the people that come with them, 120 cars total that will be through here. Again, 500 people. It is a time, speed, and distance race. So essentially, it's not how fast they're going, it's how well they run the course. The teams this year, the waiting list is about 3 years to get into this. So many of these teams signed up literally 3 years ago, not knowing where they were going to go. The teams are coming from as far away as Japan, England, and Germany. They literally fly their cars over to the United States to compete in this. So we're talking about people that spend lots of monies on this race. Past cities, I thought this was interesting where it's been, just to kind of give you a take on how exciting it is for us. San Antonio, like I said, Buffalo, Nova Scotia, Orlando, Seattle, Anaheim, and Owensboro. So pretty neat opportunity for us. So what's it mean thus far before it even starts? Downtown properties are already sold out as far as hotels because, again, they bring such a big crew and have stretched out into the 54 property. A couple of details. They said expect between 5,000 to 10,000 people to show up for this because, again, the closest you're going to be to see these cars if you're what's called a gearhead in this area is Owensboro. We're going to bring them in along Veterans. That's where they'll actually park the cars. The finish line will kind of be right behind the Hampton Inn there in the Bluegrass Hall. We're actually going to take advantage of the fact that they're going to be in here and turn this into a festival to invite the entire community. We've already been in talks with Tim, of course, with you guys, to set up the local car club that comes for a downtown cruise in. So they'll be on 2nd Street. These guys and gals will be on Veterans. We've had several partners, and that's really the only way we've been able to make this possible. Like I said, the other cities, it's not cheap to do this because of sponsoring fees and that kind of a thing. But essentially, the city of Owensboro, we've been talking with Tim, going to have a great band on the Bluegrass Hall stage. Again, this is the week of Romp, so the Bluegrass Hall, the backstage is empty. They're, of course, all out at Yellow Creek, but they've graciously given us their backstage where Tim's going to do some programming there. Old South Barbecue is how we're going to feed them, so we can give them a little taste of what barbecue is all about in Owensboro. And then, of course, Don Moore will be our automotive sponsor. In case some of the cars break down, they need mechanics on hand, they'll be down there. And then the fiscal court is also partnering with us to make this possible. So great community event. Again, it's the Wednesday of Romp. Great overnight. People will be eating in our restaurants, shopping, staying in our hotels. Certainly when you can fill up properties on a Wednesday night, definitely a good advantage. So I'll just kind of, if we can show like a little video here that I brought. This is kind of what, in the past, what it kind of looks like. Again, the audio is not so much important. Just kind of wanted you to get a visual on what this thing looks like, where these cars are coming from. Again, we kind of want to create like a downtown festival with this. Again, we're calling it the Road to Romp. But as you can see, when you take 120 cars and we pile them up all along Veterans, the visual will be really impressive. Again, last year it went through California and Oregon. It rotates throughout the United States. So as you can see, should be a really fun thing for both the community, and it'll be nice to have 500 additional people in Owensboro overnight on a Wednesday. So I'm open to any questions that you might have, or really the only thing that we're asking, other than, like I said, the entertainment that we're working with Tim on, is just please show up and help us welcome these people. Again, they're coming in from all over the world to see our community.
Dave, are you going to have places for vendors and stuff along the street to sell
Absolutely.
stuff?
We're working now, again, with Tim on creating kind of a map, but essentially we'll park the cars down Veterans. The Bluegrass Hall is where we'll have a food tent, working with the convention center to provide some drinks. They'll have kind of like a mobile bar for adult beverages and you know, sodas and water and that kind of a thing. Looking at bringing a couple food trucks to park along the way too in that area, so that we want them to come and experience the music and eat, but we also want them to spend money and hopefully my next move will be to meet with some of those downtown businesses and see if we can perhaps approach the We Are Downtown group now and see if they'll even stay open during that time so that people can come check their places out, that kind of a thing. See if they'd be open to that.
Great. Any
Yep.
other question?
Thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it.
One other thing. How did this come about? Did you
Sin-
tell me that already? And I
Yeah,
didn't
well,
listen?
I touched on it, but I'll get kind of into the details. Essentially, we got a call. The guy that runs this is out of Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay.
And he had heard of Owensboro, never been. I said, well, come on down for a visit, because they start with site visits, and then that's how they select the cities they want.
Okay.
They know the kind of the route, but they don't know exactly what city they're going to stop in. And so we did a site visit here and just showed him the downtown area, and he immediately just fell in love with it and just thought it would be the perfect location for people to come check out. So
Now we can tell everybody we don't need an interstate, that we got the great race.
we got the
coming
great
here.
race. That'll be our next argument. That sounds
Okay,
good to
that's
me.
good.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is the 2020-2025 Consolidated Plan. Miss Abby Shelton, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to present a concise version of the consolidated plan. As you know, you've all received a draft of the document thus far to review at your leisure. It is a long document, not as long as the actual NRSA plan, but we'll cover that later. So today I'm presenting you the draft, a draft of what we will present to the Citizens Advisory Committee on March 23rd. We are also having a Northwest NRSA meeting that will be next Thursday at 5:15 here in this room, and we'll have a more localized team of the actual residents and businesses that this will affect in that room at that time. So there will be a lot of terms and acronyms thrown out there during this presentation. I won't cover them all, but for the purpose of this presentation, Community Development Block Grant and Home Partnership Funds are the big ones that we will cover. What is a consolidated plan? It's the tool that assesses the affordable housing and development needs for a certain portion of the community. It's required for communities to receive these funds: Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnerships funding, Housing Trust Funds, Emergency Solutions Grant, Housings for Person with AIDS grants, and of course we only receive the CDBG and home funds. It's a two-pronged approach to evaluating needs and setting goals. It's data-driven, and we do community engagement. It's a document term of at least 3 to 5 years. Ours will be 5. And each year after the initial consolidated plan, the annual action plan will build upon that consolidated plan. The actual structure of the plan includes these major categories, which are dialed down within that document. We have the summary, of course, the engagement process, a needs assessment of the area, market assessment, strategies and goals, and the annual action plan. The engagement means that we've taken thus far, we have done a mass mailing regarding survey to businesses and residents, 1 public forum last year, 2 advisory group meetings this year, 2 pre-proposal public hearings this year, which involves the Citizens Advisory Committee on Community Development, consultations with developers, service providers, health services, and 1 post-proposal public hearing, which will be at the City Commission meeting, where I will present the plan for your formal approval so we can send this to HUD and get our federal funding. So we have chosen to do, as in the past, neighborhood revitalization strategy area, of course. This will be located in the northwest area. It's kind of a wordy slide, but I want to make sure we cover and understand why it's important, because some communities just do a community-wide consolidated plan, but we feel with the funding that we receive, it's better to dial in and make a bigger impact with a smaller area.
Abby, do you have some diagram of just exactly where this is?
Yes, I'm getting
somewhere along the line.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So a neighborhood revitalization strategy area, or NRSA, designation was established by HUD in 1995 to address economic development and housing needs within economically disadvantaged communities. A municipality must file an application in conjunction with their consolidated plan as part of the overarching community development block grant program. The proposed NRSA must be a contiguous area primarily zoned for residential use. And additionally, the application must be produced in collaboration with community stakeholders and must include a thorough assessment of the existing economic conditions and detailed steps that will be undertaken to improve the vitality of the community. So like I said before, we have done this in the past. This will be the fifth NRSA, and as you can see, the outcomes of the public investment we put in these areas coupled with the private investment results in a great return. So we have maximized our capacity for using our public funds. To date, from 1999, when the first NRSA was enacted, we have a combined input of $35 million within each of these neighborhoods, $11 million in public and $24 million in private. And here's the map you asked about, Mayor. It extends from about Walnut Street. These are fluid lines, so if we feel a need to extend these at some point or minimize these, this is still a draft document. But the proposed boundaries right now, the study boundaries were from Walnut Street to pretty much the municipal boundaries in the river on the north, and from the west, Ewing Road, and then to 5th Street. So just to give an idea of how we select, of course, the areas, they have to be a certain percentage LMI, and it's 51%. As you can see in this slide, the number of the population in this area is actually 76% under the poverty level, according to the HUD income limits. It does involve 3 block groups and 2 census tracts. Census Tract 2, Block Group 1 and 2, Census Tract 2, Block Group 3. So a little history, won't bore you, but it's kind of neat. Of course, you can guess as early as the 1840s, the area around today's Dublin Lane became home to a wave of Irish immigrants who settled the area. One of the main draws was a meatpacking house in 1852. The combination of available jobs and connections to the local area drew more immigrants to the area. The meatpacking house operated until 1863, when an embargo related to the Civil War forced it to close. Of course, there were also some distilleries and things of that nature that popped up over the course of those years. And it was actually the social hub of Owensboro. The fairgrounds were located out there. So within the proposed boundaries, there's about 1,083 parcels, 748 single family, giving us the primarily residential area. 73 are vacant housing, 31 were mobile homes, 5 were townhouses, 33 were rental parcels, 83 were commercial parcels, and 90 were vacant land parcels. And of course, 20 of them were tax exempt, and this is all from the Davis County PVA's office. Population estimate pretty much follows the nature of our combined municipality, with the majority, 73%, being white and 12% being black. And then we have a smaller percentage of 2 or more races combined in that area. Population trends within the area, and I'll get into this housing market analysis that we did, but Bowen National pulled some really good numbers together for us, not just for the NRSA service area, but for the city and county. And we get a good idea of how this area is not flourishing compared to the city. So you look at the percent change of the total population compared to the rest of the city, county, combined city and county. It's very stagnant, which is another indicator that we need to assess how we can help this area flourish. Of course, when we use the poverty limits, we go by what HUD tells us those numbers are. They have been steadily increasing over the years, which means we have a strong economy here, and that is a national trend as well. But this is what we use to qualify people for our programs, and these are the 2019 income limits because they have not released the 2020 limits yet. So as part of the input process, we did send out surveys last year. Each household physical address within the area received a survey, as well as the business owners who do not live in that area. So everybody was mailed a survey physically, a way to access it online and to engage. So we received 72 residential surveys, and then we received 34 business surveys back. From that information, we delineated that these were the issues that the residents and business owners had with the area. Not sure about recommending the area for residents: stagnant growth, safety issues, crime, perceived drugs, lack of green spaces, lack of business opportunity, appearance and quality of housing stock, and a lack of affordable housing. Continued lack of shopping facilities, poor street and alley maintenance, litter, lack of housing maintenance, opportunity for new business, lacking community life, lack of yard maintenance, loitering and transients, and of course the Cadillac Motel. Yes, sir.
How did this federal agency feel about condemnation when it pertains to?
It's allowed. You have to go through a rigorous process, a very expensive process. So we try to stay away from it using CDBG funds and our home funds.
Thank you.
So the strengths identified in this area: it's of course close to the river, has many historic homes, it's close to downtown, located in an opportunity zone, which is a federal designation we'll get into later. It has great public transportation, has great city garbage service, water drainage, park and recreational facilities. Residents are invested in the area. So the scope of the housing needs analysis that I referred to earlier, it's a market study analysis basically that gives us the backbone of how we tackle some of the problems that are located in this area. And I said before, Bowen National undertook this for us late last year. So it consists of a housing survey and/or inventory of rental housing alternatives, an inventory and evaluation of the local for-sale housing market, identification and evaluation of residential units in the development pipeline, an evaluation of numerous demographic and economic trends, stakeholder interviews, housing gap estimates for rental and for-sale housing, and an overview of housing priorities and recommendations. The housing priorities identified by the needs assessment, which is a large document you are more than welcome to read. It's online at owensboro.org. All of this is, of course. The market requires additional housing to meet the needs of existing residents and to attract new households and investment. Focus should be placed on supporting the preservation of existing housing structures in the market. Efforts should be made to improve neighborhood appearances through streetscape beautification and facade improvement endeavors, and explore establishing incentives and initiatives that will encourage development or redevelopment of vacant land and buildings. So also within this market analysis, it shows the households by income, and of course you can see, moving from Mechanicsville to Triplet Twist now to this area, we have a great need for affordable and market rate housing. So we delineate the priority needs, which is one of the major focuses of the consolidated plan document that we have to submit to HUD. The first priority need is increase and maintain affordable housing stock. These are not the programs, these are just the priority needs. We'll dial into the programming later. Of course, this is a high priority for our city. We propose to provide funding for the development of new and or rehabilitated rental units affordable to households at or below basically the 80% of the area median income categories. Fund construction of new affordable housing units for sale to low and moderate income buyers. Develop and implement a rating tool to be used when evaluating proposed affordable housing developments that scores and weights criteria such as proximity to public transportation, excuse me, proximity to job centers and other opportunity factors. Develop an incentive program that encourages private sector developers to include affordable units in their projects and advocate for the adoption of the program by city government. Extend the useful life of existing affordable housing through weatherization, emergency repair, and rehabilitation, and provide down payment assistance to eligible low and moderate income homebuyers, and provide, of course, homebuyer education assistance. And I will reiterate, these are just priority needs, these are not programs, so this will span the life of 5 years, and within these priority needs we have some wiggle room to amend our annual action plan or put new programming within it. Priority need number 2, support and invest in economic growth. Of course, this is high in that area. Undertake commercial revitalization in target areas through the construction and or rehabilitation of commercial structures and through facade improvement programs. Prioritize funding for economic development projects based on proximity to transit. The third priority need, provide other non-homeless public services to include undertake public services projects and programs, pretty vague. Supplement code enforcement services in low and moderate income neighborhoods to curtail substandard housing and other instances of blight. Undertake public infrastructure projects that complement the existing and planned public transportation network to include sidewalk construction, improvement, and maintenance. Undertake the public facilities projects that complement the existing planned and public transportation network to include improvements to bus stops. Fund transit corridor enhancements such as facade improvements. Prioritize funding for other infrastructure and facility projects based on proximity to transit, and allow for program administration funding for CDBG and home federal grants. So the goals of these priority needs, of course, are to infuse the area, and we're specific to the NRSA, and we will spend the majority of our funding in the NRSA, but loosely we can stretch out to the rest of the city in the qualified census tracts that, which means they qualify by income level. We want to increase the accessibility to public infrastructure, housing rehabilitation, new construction housing, rental rehabilitation, elimination of slum and blight, financial and housing education, and home buyers financing. So that's the big document. Now we get into the year-to-year document, which is the annual action plan. So the annual action plan, of course, we do every year. It uses the consolidated plan as a guide. All funded projects serve a goal and need within the consolidated plan, and we reevaluate every year how these projects are funded, and this gives us the tool to do that. So, suggested programs for the new consolidated plan. In the home partnerships program funding category, it's all first-time home buyer oriented, of course. We're going to work with our CHODA, our Community Housing Development Organization, on new builds. These will be scattered site as properties become available. City-funded new builds, which will also be scattered site. And of course, we have a strong partnership with Habitat for Humanity. We do occasionally come across properties that they are willing, or they have some presence there already, so we're willing to give them those properties to build on and a small grant to complete that. A $5,000 down payment assistance program, which will be NRSA focused. So that means if there's a house within that area that somebody wants to purchase, we'll give them up to $5,000 towards down payment and or closing costs. Of course, it has to pass inspection and all the fun HUD stuff. And of course, we'll do some home buyer education. It's about a $95 course that we have to have our applicants complete. And to be a first-time home buyer, you cannot have owned a home in the past 3 years. our community development block grant programs. Of course, we're proposing to do some commercial facade rehab. The proposed limit is $15,000 with a 25% match above and beyond the $15,000. An existing homeowner rehab, max $15,000 grant with a sliding scale qualification. So even if you are over income, you will still qualify, but you'll pay more of that match. The lowest is the 0 to 30%. We would propose to pay 95% of the cost, and the homeowner would pay 5%. Of course, this will be exterior rehab only. Continued CDBG proposed programs, landscape design improvements on 1st and 2nd Streets, sidewalk connections, lighting enhancements for safety, bus stop installations, and of course, we just completed a downspout removal program in the Triplet Twist area, which was very successful because, of course, it's something they have to do by EPA standards, but a lot of the residents have in that area experienced some kind of flooding in their basement, so we did the proverbial kill two birds with one stone. So we're going to do this again within the Northwest NRSA, and I believe they're going to start doing smoke testing soon for this, pending your approval. CDBG continued. This will be a new program that we propose to implement, which is a rental rehab. It'll be limited to properties located in the Northwest NRSA. A wide variety of building types will be eligible, but may include small mixed-use buildings, duplexes, residential homes, etc. The city will prioritize properties where the owner is an occupant in one of the units, such as the rental unit of an owner-occupied duplex or mixed-use building, which includes commercial space housing the building owner's business. The city will prioritize buildings which improve vacant or underutilized space, such as the conversion of an unused second floor into an apartment. This will be a $15,000 grant with a $25,000 investment from the owner, which is an $18,750 total project. How do we get the buy-in? Financing mechanism. The city will place a lien on the property for up to 5 years and the amount of the total city assistance provided. No monthly payment will be required and no interest will be charged. The lien will be discharged and the amount of assistance forgiven after the 5 years. If there has been no instance of default, the following will be those instances: uncorrected code violations, and a conflict of interest by the owner, including rental to a family member, employee, or other person depriving the general public of an opportunity for rent-assisted units. Now, in order to keep the housing at a fair market value and/or affordable, we will impose rent limits on the low-income people that occupy those units. So units initially occupied by households with incomes under 80% of the median income must be rented for a monthly rent no higher than the HUD fair market rent. The city may, at its discretion, impose longer or more stringent rent restrictions as a condition for undertaking the project. And I'm not going to go through the numbers, but you see the fair market, 29 fair market rent limits there, and I will look for the HUD's constantly sending out emails every day about updated programs. So. This is not part of the NRSA, but this will be kind of an anchor project to hopefully spur new development. Of course, you know we have an RFP for senior housing and/or new senior center out there that's due back March 26th. No funding from the general fund or grants at this time. It will be private developer driven. It's separate from the plan, of course, but can benefit from the NRSA designation through low-income housing tax credits in their scoring process. So our 2020 annual allocation, we got that early this year, so we don't have to do any amendments. I know finance is happy about that. Their CDBG allocation is up $5,000 from last year to $499,000. Home is also up from $10,000 last year, which is at $266,000. I know it's a busy slide, but focus on the yellow portion, which is our 2020 budget. In the home partnership program funding, if you can go down that left column with me, of course we have our home admin set aside, which is capped at 10%. Our CHOTO will receive 15% of that and can receive more from the city if we so choose to do so. In addition, the City Commission, the city is nice enough to provide a $75,000 loan revolving loan for each of these homes that we do, and that is paid back to the city upon sale of that house. We have a down payment assistance program. That's for first-time home buyers, of course. $26,000 is set aside for that this time. Home buyer education, $1,064, and then home build developers, we have $171,000 set aside for that, and that includes not only Habitat, but any of the home builds that we do. So our total allocation is down there. Now you slide down to the very bottom, and you'll see the yearly, or the total budget. So the federal budget for the 5 years is at about $1.25 million, and the local budget will be $375,000, of course, understanding that that is a loan that goes back to the city, so the city is not out any general funds. Our community block grant funding, sorry, it's an even busier slide. Focus on the yellow cells, and you can see that we have $74,000, about $75,000 set aside for rental exterior rehab, $84,000 for existing homeowner exterior rehab, $55,000 for downspout removal, which I hope will be completed probably this year, maybe next year. So that'll be a one-time hit. $18,000 for beautification, $18,000 for safety. Of course, we take the 20% cap on admin at $99,000, and then we'll set aside $146,000 for the commercial side of it. So you can see the federal budget total for 5 years is $2 million. And of course, there's no local funds put in the CDBG match. So, of course, we're back to why do we do an NRSA? We look for, as part of, hold on. This is the total NRSA document that I have to submit to HUD, so I have to put in measures and outcomes to make sure that we're appropriately spending our money. So I'll be finalizing this and hopefully getting this to the advisory team for review, pending approval and any changes to any of the programs that you may have. But as you can see, our purpose is not to increase property values to the point where the people that are living there can't afford to live there. We want to make sure that the people that have lived there, because the ones that have been there for a long time, that they get a return on their investment should they decide to sell. Additionally, we look for at least a 60% rate of home ownership. The area, northwest area, is at 35%, so we hope to increase that substantially by the end of this consolidated plan. Of course, we want to create some more affordable housing units and some home buyer opportunities. 76% of the structures, according to the Davis County PVA rating system, are unsound. And we'll do about 15 commercial business enhancements, and that, of course, is up for some wiggle room. Public investment, $3.67 million is what we're hoping to spend in that area. Of course, our allocation changes every year, so that could go up or down. And then private investment, we are hoping to get at least $3.798 million in private investment in that area. So we will have a total investment of $7.468 million by the time this is all over. In this area, we have 2,532 households, and we will reach this area with 364 combined projects. So today I'm here, March 10th, presenting this plan for you and for consideration, not for any vote, of course, today, but to give you a better idea of where we're going with our consolidated plan. And I will see you again on April 7th at the commission meeting to formally approve with a municipal order. And like I mentioned before, we'll have our second advisory team meeting not this Thursday, but next Thursday on March 19th. And then the second public hearing of the Citizens Advisory Committee on March 23rd. And then hopefully we'll tie everything up and submit the consolidated plan and action plan to HUD for approval, and we can start taking applications in July for these programs. How's that for a year and a half of work?
Abby, can I ask you a question? You know, I've been asked multiple times in the community about the Triplet Twist project.
Sure.
You know, and when you and as Nate, city manager, brought it to my attention, you know, you compare visually what Mechanicsville and all the other things that had happened. Do you all, is it stupid to say, do you do a before and after catalog visual thing of what you've actually done as a reference to the millions of dollars that go into
Yes.
that? You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. We do, actually, our media crew helps us with before and after photos. With every project, I have to, of course, take a picture of before, and I'll do a picture of after. I will say that in the Triplet Twist area, we had a large focus on housing rehab, and of course, we have the Gabe's shopping facility that we're rehabbing. And quite selfishly, the finagling we did with Gabe's Tower was a huge part of that process. So with the little money that we had, thank you for that, by the way, for the little amount of money that we had received, the majority of it has gone into the existing rehab for the homeowners, which you wouldn't see if you didn't go into the side streets.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then, of course, Gabe Shopping Center is taking up quite a big chunk, but that was identified as one of the major anchors in the community, so we wanted to rehab that to try to put some more retail in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Jeff? Commissioner Sanford,
Abby,
I'm sorry.
I noticed in your presentation that 69 houses were, where was that slide? Backwards. Was it 70? 70 houses were inhabitable, or was
No,
it?
no.
or-
Not inhabitable, but they're not up to, they lack
They lack
luster, as you could say. Yeah,
roof,
they need
siding, all
yes,
that.
Yes.
Okay. Percentage-wise, what amount of people that are homeowners take the advantage of the opportunity, as opposed to investors or anything like that?
I'd say, well, gauging from what we've done in the past, it's a large percentage. It's probably about 80% of our grant funding, which is good.
That's good.
It's where we want to put our money. And especially this area, we're going to do a heavy marketing campaign right before we release the July 2020. That's when we'll do it. I'm going to send postcards to each of the addresses in that area, delineating what the programs are, how to get in contact. Of course, the advisory team that has been put together, that is volunteered, they are on the ground and have actually said, what can we do to help? So I'm going to look to them to mouth of word, tell people how to sign up. Dana Peebler at the Senior Center has done a great job of partnering with us, and they're going to actually have offered to take applications and help with that side of it, because the application process, the income certification process is so labor intensive. So you won't see me probably for the next 5 years. I'll be downstairs just doing these applications, but that's my job, and that's what that's what the program's for. But that being said, it's, I foresee with the way the percentages are for the income qualifications, I foresee a lot of people taking advantage of this.
As far as landscape, and I saw a number in there. Is that how much will that do, and how much will that get? It was not a very big number.
No, it's not. I would like to contract with a landscape architect to explore some opportunities for First Street connection from downtown over to English Park. I won't be doing, right now, I won't be doing any private investment in landscape. That will be up to the homeowner. And if we can squeeze a little bit in with the funding that we have for the existing homeowner exterior rehab, we'll do that. We have the wiggle room to do that. But it's not going to, I don't have a big budget, and
I understand.
And I want to put the majority of the funding that I have into the homeownership, increasing that in the area.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith-Wright.
Abby, in all of the revitalizations like you've done in Germantown, Mechanicsville, they all have their style.
Yes.
And so when you start this project, is it the advisory committee who decides what that style is or what that look is, or do you do it, or how is that done?
If you're speaking of the actual homes that are built in the area, we have a certain standard, of course, that we do want to abide by, but I plan to take our architectural drawings and plans out to bid, so we can have some refresher in that area. As far as there's a lot of 100-year-old homes, and we want to keep with that that feeling of you're in an older neighborhood, but there's newer homes, and mesh with what's in that area. So we'll have to address that. The advisory team will be a big part of that, of course. The home buyers will be a big part of that if we can identify them and what their needs are. So within a federal budget. So.
Well, I just know that, like the homes in Mechanicsville, you know, they've got stone and brick and that kind of thing. And I didn't know if the homeowners were able, because the area is all kind of all looks like it all goes together.
Yes.
So I didn't know if the homeowner was able to say, I'd like my house to look like this, or you have guidelines as to.
There's no guidelines. It's just the perception of what the community development department puts out there. We are open to suggestions as far as do we put a front porch with, you know, the typical columns, and do we put the stone at the bottom? So that'll be up for discussion within the advisory team. And of course, if you guys have if the public has any input, that's what we're here for, to take that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Condon.
Thank you, Mayor. Abby, with yourself being, as you self-proclaim, a department of one, with the work that is being laid out here, looking forward, number one, I suppose, how much more help do you need in the office?
If I could clone myself, I'd probably get 5.
Of course.
And, you know, I say that with a grain of salt because I selfishly enjoy doing each of these programs myself because of the gratification I get working with the public. But if I could have somebody else to help with the programming and just some of the paperwork side of it, the reporting side of it, because each homeowner, new home build takes about, I'd say, 2 weeks straight of intensive time to actually go through plans, go through the RFP process with purchasing, and then of course income qualification guidelines, and then application guidelines, and home buyer education. So it's a long process. Now with some of these CDBG programs, it's a little bit faster, but it's still, you know, cross your T's, dot your I's, and have to report to HUD, and it's a pretty big file still. So.
Because I applaud the effort. I think all of us agree that the Northwest area has not had any attention in decades. And by doing this could be the foundation for the rest of First Street connecting over to English Park with sidewalks, lighting,
Sure.
or even taking the north-south roads like Maple, Orchard, at the end of them, right at the river, creating overlooks in that area. So there's a lot of possibilities that we could do or try to do over the next 5 years and do it right for everyone in that area that really has been ignored for a long period of time because it has a lot of value. You can already see the value north of First. You need to just jump south of First to Second and even to Third Street to really make a difference in people's lives. Always remembering some people that live there, what would they do if something else came in to price them out of the market too. So we always have to remember that. So I totally support what you're doing. Maybe we need to add a little bit more ourselves, the city itself, to make it better. Thank you, Mayor.
I suppose you do get help from somebody around here to help you with some of this stuff, don't you?
Well, I rely on engineering for some of the questions. Danae and Angela help me with the finance portion of it, of course. And the things that the realm of the arms extending from the grant programs, yes. I reach out to GRAD, of course, for help with some of the historic preservation side of it. There's a lot of involved there. I've got a pretty good process, but if I could help more people, I would love to do that.
Okay, thank you. Good job.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next item on the agenda is Owensboro Fire Department 2019 Annual Report. New Chief, James Howard.
Yeah, James Howard, Fire Department address is 512 West 9th Street. Thanks for giving me a full hour to go over our annual report for the
Next.
Project list.
I'll be as brief as I can and still provide you with the information that I compiled for this report. Once again, this is our annual report for 2019. We're always looking forward, but it's worth taking a look back to see where we've been and what we've accomplished. So our mission, and I'm not going to read every word on every one of these slides because you can do that for yourself, but our mission is to save lives and protect property, and we feel like we're pretty good at doing that. Some of our values you can see listed on the screen. I want to draw your attention especially to teamwork and integrity. Those are our core values. What those values lead to, we think, is a high level of customer service that we provide to the community. Once again, going back to our mission. Our organizational chart, some people are more familiar with it than others. What you don't see on this chart is what actually goes into it that's above me for the actually, above the fire chief, you have the city administration and elected officials. And of course, above you guys, I would always put the public, the ones who put you in office in the first place. So that's who we're serving. Those are our customers. And they're also our bosses. So the budget, kind of a snapshot of the 1920 budget, which we're still working under. Once again, I don't have to read all this to you, but you can see the vast majority of our budget goes into personnel, because the fire department is made out of people. Most people think the iconic image of the fire truck, but the fire department really is made out of people, and we exercise our judgment and practice our skills in the field, and that is the service that we deliver. Total budget's 11.4 million, and that is actually slightly down from the year before, so that's good. We try to be fiscally responsible. Draw your attention to the word "other" on the screen, just so you know. Some of the other things you can kind of figure out where the money's going into those whenever you have personnel expenses, maintenance, supplies. But under other, just so you know, the $184,000 that's spent there goes into safety, training, insurance, and then around $40,000 to $45,000 to pay for hazmat physicals for our first responders every year. Let me see. Oh, okay. Some of our stats. You see on the bottom of the slide, actually, if you kind of work backwards there, 8167 is the number of calls for service that we actually had, incidents that we responded to throughout 2019. So it's kind of surprising to some people. If you look at the fires up there, that doesn't include false alarms and a lot of other things, but 299 actual fires that we had to go in and extinguish throughout the year. The fires are a small percentage of the runs that we actually make, despite the fact that our brand is the fire department. So the leading cause of fires generally in communities is cooking fires. We have 51 of those, so roughly 1 out of 6 fires that we actually go in and put out are caused by cooking. Other common causes in homes would be smoking and then electrical fires and the like. So cooking fires are distinguished from structure fires. Structure fires would be a fire that, no matter what the cause is, actually spread into the structure. It's a little more challenging, a little more dangerous, not just for the homeowner and the community, but for us as firefighters. And then 18 vehicle fires. The vast majority of our runs, 76% in fact, are EMS related. You see 6207. Like I said, that's about 3/4 of the total calls that we have for service. The runs that we go on the most when it comes to the EMS side, you have the respiratory emergencies. It's almost 1,200 runs, close to 1,000 cardiac emergencies, and over 900 traumatic injuries. And those numbers actually stay pretty steady from year to year. So there you see kind of the visual putting those together. 3/4 of that pie, once again, is the EMS runs, and then you see the other slices that are built out there. So when you see the visuals on the left where you have the fire and then the iconic bunker gear, like what the public actually sees of us when we deliver the service in the community and their homes, we're going from those visuals to a visual like this, which is pulse oximetry we put on medical patients, and a blood pressure cuff. We're out there assessing patients in the field. That's 76% of what we're doing when we hit the road. Some other statistics that I brought along for you. 21,722 training hours. That's actually up 20% from last year. If you look over the 5-year period, it's up about 44%. So we've been stepping it up as far as getting our people prepared to perform in the field. 2,272 fire and life safety inspections. These are commercial inspections. That's up 10% from last year, up 33% from 5 years ago. And then almost 700 hydrant flows. We have a cycle. There's a lot more than 700 hydrants in the community, and we have them on a cycle where we do a certain percentage of them every year. Average response time, 4 minutes and 34 seconds. By my calculations, that knocks about 24 seconds off the average response time from last year. We're really proud of that. Call volume. This slide is actually, you see 5 slices of this pie, and each one is is an area for each of our stations. Ideally, in an ideal world, there would be 20% for each of our 5 stations if it was the same, but really our stations are strategically placed to put us close to each area, but there are heavier run volume areas, so you can see some of the percentages are higher than the 20% and some are slower. The year in review, like I said, our brand is fighting fire, and we did quite a bit of that in the past year, right up until the last day of the year, whenever we had a chimney fire at Old Hickory. I'll say one of the stats that I didn't put earlier in the slide, but I'll mention, and it's not one that I'm proud of, but we did have 3 fatalities from house fires last year. That's not something that we normally have in our community. We didn't have any the year before, but as a result of 2 fires in December, we actually did lose 3 of our citizens, 2 in one fire and 1 in another. And that's something, like I said, that our community is not used to and something that we don't want to get used to. So other things we did last year, I mentioned all those hours of training. We trained with fire, we trained with water, trained with ropes hanging off of buildings, trained with hazardous materials for those low-frequency, high-risk events, and trained a lot with structural collapse, which as a department we've really stepped up in the last 5 years with structural collapse and technical rescue training. Where we work, whenever we train on something that's low risk or high risk but low frequency, sometimes the frequency steps up, and that's true of structural collapse. There were several incidents last year when people ran into things with their vehicles, oddly enough, and we had the skill set to go up in and shore up some of those buildings. Well, like I said, we've really stepped up our capacity to respond to the structural collapse. And going forward, where that helps us is if we ever do get some of those events, whether it's a tornado or an earthquake, or something that's a wider disaster in our community or where we can help another community, we're the people who are pretty sharp on the skill set that's required to respond to those incidents and to help the community. Some other things that have gone on in the past year, you'll see that first slide, that's the lip sync battle. Last year was the 2nd year that we did it. Around this time last year, we put Quint 2 into service out at Station 2. Quint 2 is kind of a special truck for us. It can work as an engine company, as a ladder truck, as a rescue truck. It's a very versatile truck. In the middle there on top, we're really proud of our association. Whenever Angel invites us down to WBKR to do the St. Jude's Radiothon, that's from last year. We did it again this year. The next slide, which is an aerial photo of the area around the Rick House from O.Z. Tyler. I think the community, some of the community was maybe not very enthusiastic a couple weeks before July 4th when we told them they couldn't set off the fireworks in that area. But we got through that. You see, physical fitness is always important to our firefighters, and that's what's in that next to last slide. And then on the far right, you see another effort that we're really proud of is our association with the Goodfellows Club and being able to participate with the Christmas party there. One program that we're always extremely proud of is whenever in Fire Prevention Month in October, whenever we bring all the 2nd graders from the city schools and the Catholic schools out to our training center to put them through our fire safety program and give them a kind of a taste of what we do and try to send them home with a message where they could put a little pressure on their parents to make sure they have those batteries in their smoke detectors, making those escape plans to get out of their home if there is an emergency. Once again, really proud of this program. It's been there since before I came on the fire department, and we plan on continuing that and growing into the later grades and building on that in the future. Towards the end of last year, whenever one of our own lost his dad, and then shortly thereafter lost his 13-year-old daughter, the fire department and the community came together and wore red. Wearing the red was an outward manifestation, but there was a lot of work behind the scenes and a lot of support that went to that family and to the fire department whenever that was happening. And the Pickrell family is still strong, and they're not over the loss, but the outpouring from the community, I think, touched everyone. Retirements, well, sir.
None.
Not yet, but I do have some animations there. So I think a lot of you know this guy. But I say the goal, like you put in a full career of work, you try to do some good work, and at the end of it, you deserve retirement, and you go on to that next stage, whether it's another career or spending time with your grandkids or whatever. I'm going to show you some folks who've gotten to that point and earned that retirement. So you have Engineer Jody Fiorella, who retired at the end of July, Lieutenant Chris Curtis, and Engineer DJ Head, who retired at the end of October, Engineer Chuck Pedley, Battalion Chief Chris Luttrell, and Chief Stephen Mitchell, who retired at the end of November. Whenever, in our organization, whenever retirements take place, that's an opportunity for other folks to step up and take on those roles and to develop themselves and be ready for the future. And that's exactly what happens. So for each one of those departures, we have people who stepped up into those roles. You have Chris York, who was promoted to engineer, Grant Hare, who's promoted to lieutenant, Kobe Grayson, who was promoted to engineer, Stephen Reddish, who was promoted to engineer, and then you probably remember in this very room whenever the mayor invited me up here and we did the pinning and everything in November. So that's me with my family. And what you'll notice about all these, whenever I see our people, I don't just see the people who jump off the truck and go to work. That's what I see. I see their families, and that's who I'm responsible for and who I'm responsible to. I have a plug for my own family too, which obviously I cared enough about them to share them on the slide. And hopefully you guys had a pleasant time with them when they were here in November. Maybe one day we'll get another opportunity to bring them up here to you guys. Some of the awards from last year, and these are awards that are voted on by the peers there within the fire department. Firefighter of the Year, Chad Johnson, super sharp young guy that we love having on the department. Got him from Knoxville. Engineer of the Year, Steve Zogelman. He's one of the guys who's been around, super dependable, really good guy. Everybody loves Steve. Officer of the Year, Lieutenant Brian Roberts, a young officer, very motivated and has a very bright future with our department. Merit awards, these were actually selected by Chief Mitchell there at the end of his tenure. Battalion Chief Coulter Tate really received a merit award for his work in helping to bring a new private ambulance provider into the community whenever Yellow Ambulance let us know that they would be departing the community last year. The whole community was on kind of a tight deadline and a lot of work had to go into that. And Tate was actually pretty instrumental in that. And then Battalion Chief Chris Luttrell, before his retirement, he worked quite a bit with the work group on a CAD project to bring in a new computer-aided dispatch and records management system that isn't fully implemented. They're still working on that, but around this time next year, we should have a really good program over in dispatch and one that we can work with to help provide better data and help to lower our response times, and we'll just be stepping farther into the future with that. So some of the goals that we were accomplished, this is going back to last year's report. If some of you remember some of the goals that came from last year's report, Quint 2 was placed in service once again there in the spring. Completed the process of bringing that new private ambulance service and got that in under the deadline. Continue to implement occupational cancer prevention initiatives. This goes with changing some of our PPE so that it keeps some of the bad stuff from actually coming in contact with our skin. Instituting protocols to do decontamination on fire scenes, and also deconning the insides of our apparatus so you're not riding back to the station with that stuff on your body. Or getting into the truck and then you share it the next time you go on a run and you're not wearing that same PPE when you're going on a medical run, for instance. Added ballistic vests to our inventory. It's unfortunate that we live in a time where that's even seen as necessary, but I'll tell you that we're glad to have it in those instances where we're going to be in what we would consider to be a hot zone where the patient still needs care and we need to approach them and make sure that we have the proper equipment for that. Work to strengthen our local insurance rating. Owensboro is currently a rating of 2. 1 is the best, and we're not satisfied with the 2, so that's something that we plan on working on in the future. And there are ways that we can do that. We've already adding the Quint to give us a better standard of cover for aerial operations on the east end, adding 6 personnel that are partially funded by a federal SAFER grant, and then really stepping up on our training hours. Those are some things we've done to help so that next time we get evaluated for that ISO rating, we're going to shoot for that 1. So 2019 is in the books, and we're looking forward. But I will say we have some unfinished business. There were some goals last year that actually didn't get done during the year for different reasons, and I'll just hit those real quick. Advanced life support, going from a basic life support agency to an advanced life support agency. That's something that's very costly, very complicated, and it's something where we're trying to look for avenues to try to balance the cost to the taxpayer with the service that we can provide to them in the field. That's something we're still working on. Middle school CPR, first aid, and fire safety program. There was some turnover in the school system and in the fire department that kind of held this up, unfortunately, but it's extremely important to us. and I go back to the program with the second graders, we need to pick back up with them and give them other life skills along the way while they're still in school to help them and to help our community be safer. And offering the hands-only CPR to the middle schoolers we've identified as being a really important element in that chain. Accreditation from the Center for Public Safety Excellence is something we were trying to get off the ground at the end of last year. We're going to probably get going on that next month in April when we can send our accreditation manager to a class to kickstart that process. We're really looking forward to that and improving our performance measures in that process. Okay, so that's the unfinished business, and I definitely want to do those things, but like as far as this year, what we're looking forward to accomplishing, when I complete the transition process that started at the end of last year with all of those retirements that I mentioned. So we recently had a promotional process for battalion chief. You'll be voting on them next week at the commission meeting. And then after that, like shortly after that, we're going to be testing for our captain's position, and we already have an active list for lieutenants. So there'll be several promotions to come. The transition process continues. Establish a mentoring program for probationary firefighters. Really excited about this. I think it's something that's been missing as far as individual attention to some of the newer recruits to make sure they get off on the right foot so they're better performers later on in their careers. Put a new safety house in service. We have a new safety house coming. We're pretty excited about it. The old one that we have is not really usable anymore, and we should see this within a month, actually, I believe. And it's going to be pretty cool, and it's something we can use once again when the second graders are out there. But it's a trailer. I mean, we could take it to public events. If we can get it stickered properly or wrapped, I think it's going to be really dynamic and something we can use a lot more than the last one. I think it's going to be pretty cool. Developing a plan for renovating the Walter Freeman Training Center. There's a study that's we're trying to contract someone now to do basically a needs assessment or gap analysis for the training center. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have aging infrastructure in a lot of different areas in the city, but the fire training center is a place that we've really identified that needs some help to be up to modern standards. So we'll get that information back from that study, and then we'll start focusing on the things that we can do to bring that training center up to speed so it can be the shining jewel that it has been in the past, because it is a regional resource. Upgrading our extrication equipment to cut through stronger metals. Cars are being built differently now than they were before. Some stronger metals, some thicker metals. The presence of boron, like not all of our extrication tools are able to cut through some of the newer cars. So we want to make sure that we have the equipment out there, because part of our brand is being able to help you when you're in need, and if you're in a car, we need to be able to get you out of it if we have to cut it apart as quickly as possible. Planning for the safety of public events such as the Barbecue Fest and the Hydro Fair. Planning for the safety of public events is something that's important to us every year, but I want to highlight that. That's something that's always going on behind the scenes. Mr. Ross is really good at working with us, and we have these meetings, try to stay up to speed on what's going on, and there's a lot of back and forth between Tim Ross and the fire department and the police department as far as making these events safe for the public, because that is a priority for us. Let this bounce in there. Very importantly, performing strategic planning to set us up for success for the next 5 years. Chief Mitchell was fantastic at strategic planning. I learned a lot from him. That doesn't mean I'm going to do it exactly the way he did. I'm looking forward to this summer having a process that includes the whole department and getting buy-in from everyone, and not just update a previous strategic plan, but have our own strategic plan. And I would say coming out of that are like how we express our core values and communicate those things to you may be slightly different than what you've seen before, but it will all be about moving forward and about the customer. That's what we want to do this year. So like having this opportunity, didn't want it to pass up without me having an opportunity to say to the public what I would like for them to do, which is to engage. And the way that you can do that is to follow us on Facebook. I try to put the most up-to-date information or links that I can to the public to give you information that is actionable for you if there's bad weather or safety concerns that you have in your home. I ask that you attend city commission meetings or view them on YouTube, Facebook, or on the city's website. Don't just sit back and watch and complain, get involved. It's your city government, you vote for them. I think that you need to have a say in what happens. Be involved. Volunteer in your community. You have so many excellent organizations in this community. The library, senior centers, there's so many places where you can get out there and make a difference, and I ask that you do that. And kind of selfishly, because I am in a emergency response agency, establish safe and healthy practices in your homes, schools, and businesses. Because the one proven thing that keeps you safe isn't just another fire truck or more firefighters, it's you changing those behaviors in your own home, where you work, and in your schools so that you keep yourself and others safe. With that, I say thank you, be safe. Do you have any questions for me? Yeah.
Good job, Chief. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. City project list is the next item on the agenda. City Manager Nate Pagan's on the list here. What are you going to tell us, Nate?
Well, nothing in particular, Mayor. The list has been provided for your update on key projects and initiatives, and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, we might as well update the Gates Tower project, you know, because the public doesn't get this list, so go right ahead. Assistant City Manager Leland Hancock.
Thank you, Mayor. We're making progress. I have to thank Kevin Coy and his team, Wayne Shelton as well, for their involvement. We did have a pre-construction meeting last week. Fences are going up, and you will see probably late March they'll begin to mobilize on site and moving that asbestos and any of the hazardous materials that may be found in the building. That will take about 6 weeks, and then the remaining 6 weeks will be the actual demolition phase. So property surveys, environmental obviously goes in, and then you've got your vibration equipment that will be installed to monitor all of that activity as well.
They're not going to blow it up.
They are not going to implode the building.
Hey, could you say that again? They're not going to blow it up,
They will
right?
not be imploding the building.
Okay, thank you. All right, so your projection is like 3.5 months you ought to be completed, right?
Yes,
Weather
sir.
permitting? Okay, thank you. Okay, so Glover Carey Bridge lighting?
Another successful project as well. Continue to move forward. Think of it like building a building or building a house. Right now, you don't see a lot of work going on the bridge as they're preparing the materials, painting conduit, getting the junction boxes, all of the service work that feeds the power to the bridge. And then they're shooting for late next week to begin moving out on the deck. During that time period, they'll close down about 400 feet of one lane or the other, depending on which side of the bridge they're working. And they'll be taking off the old equipment and installing conduit in preparation for the new lights when they arrive. So those delays will start in the morning just after 8 o'clock so that we don't bother rush hour traffic leaving Owensboro coming into Owensboro. But you should expect some delays in the afternoons as the state has allowed us to work until dark basically. So, and they'll be taking advantage of every minute they get.
And you're going to be there making sure they take advantage of every minute, right? Okay.
Sir.
Next question for Amanda Rogers, please. Jack Fisher Park renovation update. I'm not blindsiding you anymore, am I?
No. Thanks, Mayor, for the opportunity to update you on the project. Things are going really well. We're pleased to see turf on property now and on 2 of the fields. They're working on the red field and the yellow field currently this week. We anticipate the turf to be on all of the fields, but not done by the end of next week. They're also sewing in all the decorative pieces of the turf, the halos around home plate, the coach's box, the warm-up circles. They're going to put base anchors in and some of the other detail items next week as well, start on that next week. So within the next probably 3 or 4 weeks, it will start to look as if it's done, although there's going to be a lot of detail work to completing the synthetic turf. We did pre-construction meeting today with Jaeger on the back parking lot and the ticketing entrance, and those pieces are starting. We're working with the fence fabricator to get the gate done for the main entrance. We're also working with our site amenity coordinator to look at the shade structures and some of the additional site amenities such as benches and scorers tables that we'll need to add to that location as well. So there's a lot going on, a lot of exciting things, and we are very, very excited for Memorial Day weekend.
So we're on target.
We are good to go right now. I hate to say that on record with weather and Mother Nature, but I'm
nice to
very
mess with-
optimistic about where we're at now, and we will be playing ball Memorial Day weekend.
That's a good thing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody
Thank
else
you.
have any questions about the projects? Man, you killed us with 20 minutes. Well, yes, sir. Please come again.
Well, my mom taught me to be grateful, so I just wanted to say thank you to Beth Cecil. Like on the PowerPoint, she did help me with that as far as polishing it so it looked good. So that's what I forgot to thank her. So, okay.
All right. Do it. He did most of it. Okay. All right. Anything else, city manager? All right. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.